Welcome, everyone, to the 30-minute Midas touch from beautiful Dyersburg, Tennessee at the Herb Welsh Wrestleplex. Now, here is, pound for pound and inch for inch, the best of the best in professional wrestling today. A wrestling genius worth his weight in gold. The Golden Boy, Greg Anthony.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 30-minute Midas touch. I am your host, the Golden Boy, Greg Anthony, and with me, as always, is my co-host, the Mega Maniac, Mark Tipton.
The Mega Maniac. Okay. Once again, a very appropriate moniker to give me, and I appreciate it as always. I do like it. It is appropriate. I'm kind of going back and forth on this one. I will admit I'm kind of saying thoughts, but I appreciate it because the subject of this week's 30-minute Midas Touch podcast deals with a certain Wrestlemania. Now, those of you in the audience may know that it was recently revealed that this year's SummerSlam is going to take place at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada. And that kind of, jogged the memory a little bit, and we were thinking about what one of the memorable events that occurred in Las Vegas, Nevada, was a certain WrestleMania, or infamous, depending on your point of view, was WrestleMania 9.
Yeah, and before we get started, it's over 100 degrees in the Herb Welch Wrestleplex today. So we've got a fan going, so if you hear that, it's something in the buzzing in the background, that's what it is. But yeah, back to the subject. WrestleMania 9, and like you said, it's infamous in the fact that a lot of people, and I'm not going to say everyone, but a lot of people consider WrestleMania 9 to be the worst WrestleMania.
I would be one of those people.
He would be one of those people. I'm going to play devil's advocate to you today.
Oh, very good.
On some of that, but let's get started. Let's just run down the card and kind of. Well, okay. First thing I want to talk about is. This is actually Jim Ross's first.
You beat me to it.
Jim Ross's first WrestleMania,
Yes.
And obviously he became a huge focal point of the WWE and the announce team and things like that. And this was his first foray into sports entertainment before he was good old JR. And then of course we've got Bobby Heenan coming out on the camel.
Yes, backwards. Yes.
Which it was supposed to be, he's supposed to be a Macho Man spot. He's supposed to be on the sedan that Macho Man was coming out on.
Being carried to the ring.
With the Vestal Virgins.
Yes.
I liked how they used the Vestal Virgins.
Yeah, they mentioned that several times.
Several times.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's how kind of we got started. So what's the first match, Mark Tipton?
All right, and I will get this out of my system quickly. This event took place at Caesar's Palace. So someone in their infinite wisdom, for those of you who have not seen WrestleMania 9, someone in their infinite wisdom in the WWE hierarchy decided it'd be wise to play with the Caesars theme. And so my first viewing of Jim Ross, someone who I've mentioned I have great respect for and had followed through his announcing career, I saw his debut with the WWE. He was introduced by the great Gorilla Monsoon. I saw him appear at ringside in a toga, which for me was kind of like when Dusty Rhodes appeared in the polka dots. Here we are again. And we also got to see my favorite ring announcer, Fincus Maximus.
Right.
But let's set that aside. It was a theme. They were going with it. But that is why, Jim Ross is in a toga. Fincus Maximus, etc. Bob the Heenan in a toga, coming in backwards on a camel. All right. In any event, you go with it. And the first match, which I thought was a good way to start the show, the beginning match of the night featured Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, as the Intercontinental Champion, taking on Tatanka. Now, it is significant to note that at ringside, Luna Vachon and the great Sherry Martel were at ringside for this, and they did play a role throughout the match. And I'll just let you see, did you have any thoughts on that one in particular?
Yeah, this was, Shawn had obviously was part of the Rockers for several years, and then he entered into the singles, ranks with the Heartbreak Kid and things like that. And this was the this is WrestleMania 9. At WrestleMania 7, or excuse me, WrestleMania 8, he had opened the show with Tito Santana. So we're kind of following a trend here. Like I used to like how WWE used to prime guys. You understand? Like maybe it was first match, then you kind of work yourself way up the card, Intercontinental Champion. You understand? And eventually, if you had the right stuff, you would become the WWF Heavyweight Champion. So this is kind of them priming Shawn Michaels, and this is actually the beginning of Mr. WrestleMania because, I mean, they win. I mean, I've always liked Tatanka's work.
Yes.
I thought he was a very good, an athletic version of the Indian characters that we were used to seeing up to that point. And then Shawn Michaels, of course, was at his no, I wouldn't say at his best because I think his best was actually after 2002.
Yeah, I agree with that, by the way.
Yeah, so, but he was definitely, Shawn Michaels is always good. I've very rarely ever seen a bad Shawn Michaels match.
Oh, no, inside the ring, he can do anything you want to do inside the ring. And when I see him come to the ring, I know I'm going to get a quality match, generally speaking.
Yep. And they had a really unique finish one. This one was, Shawn pulled the ref out and got disqualified, but then as soon as he pulled him out, he got back in. Tatanka gave him his finish, the Samoan drop.
Yes.
Which they sadly called, I believe, the Trail of Tears is actually what the name of the finish was.
I wish they had rethought that, but yes.
But so he hit his finish and had Shawn beat, but then the referee DQ'd it because he got pulled out. So, and like I said, that was a really good match, really good way to open the show.
Right.
And it kind of gave you a foreshadow of the kind of.
Well, I want to thank you for bringing up the way that match ended because it seemed to be a theme for me throughout the show.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll move ahead to the next one.
Sure.
The next match, for those of us who also enjoy WCW, this was a tag match that featured the team known as the Head Shrinkers, which, to me, I see the Samoan SWAT team.
Right.
And they were taking on the Steiner brothers. And I thought it was a pretty quality tag team match. How did you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, and this is kind of where I want to go with this anyway, was as bad as you may think this show is, I think we can agree that at least we're getting good versus evil. At least we're getting shine, heat, comeback finish. You understand? We're getting the tried and true principles of professional wrestling. So for all those people that thought WrestleMania 9 was the worst WrestleMania of all time, I dare them to watch, some of the television from today and compare the two realistically. At least we had guys that we still talk about to this day on that card, and like I said, they gave us that traditional style that we're used to. This tag match obviously was really good. One thing was Scott Steiner took an amazing bump over the ropes.
Yes.
I don't know if it was meant to happen or what, but it was scary.
I didn't think so as a viewer.
Yeah. I mean, he took a big tumble, and it was definitely one of those, oh, shit, kind of moments. So that was pretty good. But once again, they had an actual heat and hot tag, and let's get into hot tag for a moment if you don't mind. When they're beating up the babyface, they're beating up the good guy, and then something happens, and they're both laid out. You know what I mean? And they're crawling to make the tag. When they both tag at the same time, that's not a hot tag.
No.
That's called a double touch.
Okay.
So, like, a lot of people get confused with that. And hot tag is actually how they did this here, which was the heels got the tag, and he's almost to the babyface to stop him from the tag, and then he gets that hot tag right at the last second, and then, oh, shit, here we go. And Rick Steiner came in with an amazing flurry of offense, which was how it's supposed to go. So, like I said, as bad as this may seem, sometimes at least it's professional wrestling.
Yes, for those of us that are fans of tag team wrestling in general, this was a pretty good example of quality tag team wrestling. I really enjoyed both teams, and I thought they both did a great job. Now, for those who might want to, criticize the WWE as the cartoonish aspect, the next match featured Crush versus Doink the Clown.
Absolutely. But see, how long had it been since you'd actually watched this event?
Oh, several years.
Okay. So let me ask you, and it's same with me too. I'd watch bits and pieces, but I've never sat down and watched the whole thing. It's been several years since I've done it. But you remembered the finish to that Doink match, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah, because
yeah.
it was
Yeah, it was played up very well.
Yeah, it was a very memorable thing. And then doing, the two Doinks, and then doing the Patty Duke.
Yeah,
mirror gimmick.
The mirror, yes.
Yeah, I mean that's all very classic stuff. Crush, for whatever reason, he just never got over the hump as a babyface or any other character, really. I mean, he was just one of those guys that was destined to toil in the middle of the card, I guess. The closest he came was with the Chronic thing. They were really hot there for a little bit, but as soon as they got to WWF, they just were.
No,
it
did not work.
No, not at all. They crashed and burned pretty hard on that one, and that was even with, Bryan Adams' friend, The Undertaker, pushing for him. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And it still went wrong. So the Crush was very 90s dressed.
Yes.
For this event, he the fluorescent
Yes.
colors that Crush were known for at that time. I love stuff like that personally, but it's you can see how dated it is.
Sure.
When you're watching.
But the idea is to be flamboyant and draw attention to yourself. And I understand that. He was trying to do what he could to stand out. I can cut him some slack on that. Now, the next match, I had actually forgotten. It stood out to me because this match featured Razor Ramon, a.k.a. Scott Hall, and he was taking on Mr. Bob Backlund in what they mentioned was his first WrestleMania appearance.
Yeah, and like you took the words right out of my mouth. I completely forgot about this match that it ever happened in my life. If someone would have said, "Hey, Razor Ramon wrestled Bob Backlund," I would have said, "Nah, I don't think so. I don't ever remember that." And then they'd been like, "Oh, it's WrestleMania 9." I've been like, "Oh shit." You're right. But this was, this is another one. We talk about how, obviously Crush looked very dated. Obviously watching today, you could see the aesthetic difference in professional wrestling from Bob Backlund to Scott Hall and Razor Ramon. Just the size and the tan and the kind of gear he had had logos on it and things like that. A lot of this, and here's Backlund.
Yeah, very plain.
Very plain Jane. White as a ghost.
Yes.
That kind of thing. So it looked lopsided. From the beginning. I love Bob Backlund too. I mean, I think he's an amazing athlete. For those of you who don't know, I actually do the Harvard Step Test, which is Bob Backlund's #1 go-to training thing.
Okay.
I adopted that from him, and it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, Bob Backlund, because I'd forgotten, and I thought that, well, let me say this. We mentioned the way matches were ending. This is the ending of this match caught my attention, and I really liked this one. It kind of stood out to me because you had Razor Ramon and Bob Backlund known as a technician, more or less, and you had Razor Ramon beat him with an inside cradle, small package, however kind of rolled him up.
Yeah, and I think this was the only clean finish on the show.
I would tend to agree.
Let me look at my. Yeah, this every other finish had some kind of weird, business attached to it of some kind.
Yes, it is.
So whether that's which I like some of that obviously, but you don't need a whole card of it. It's got to be spread out a little bit better over several pay-per-views or events or whatever. So, but yeah, the Backlund match, like you said, it was a shock. He beat Bob Backlund with an inside cradle. Right, what I mean?
And it
out of nowhere.
It was like, wow.
And it was like I don't know if it was even 4 or 5 minutes. I mean,
no, it was a relatively short match, and so it just kind of, and it stuck out in that way, and it was, I consider it pleasant because it's, it kind of, there's nothing wrong with surprising the audience here and there, and that one surprised me. Now we get to I would consider one of the marquee matches of the show, I suppose. And kind of the inspiration for my moniker at the beginning of this episode of the 30-Minute Midas Touch podcast. It was Money Incorporated, the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, and IRS Mike Rotunda, for those of you who do not know, taking on the Mega Maniacs. Now, this was Brutus the Barber Beefcake and Hulk Hogan. Now, it does play into this match that Brutus had been attacked with a Halliburton briefcase and had injuries to his face, so he wore a mask during this match as protection. And they did play up quite a bit that Hulk Hogan during this match had a severely blackened and injured eye that they attributed to attack the night before, allegedly by Money Incorporated.
Yeah, and also like this is after Bruce Beefcake came back from a parasailing accident where he had actually had his face reconstructed. Apparently he had a lot of metal in his face and things like that, and that's why when they attacked him with the briefcase, it was such a big deal, and why he was wearing the face guard itself, because he had been out of action for a couple years prior to that. Then like you said with Hogan's eye, and this is one of the things we're kind of get into here in a little bit, because I think it, the story, this Hogan tells the story that it actually happened jet skiing.
Okay.
That he was jet skiing. I went back and I listened to this. It's a little 2-minute clip on YouTube that I listened to not long ago. But basically, he says he was out there doing that, and like obviously fell off and got hit with the ski, and that broke his orbital bone.
All right.
Now see, the thing with Hulk Hogan is I cannot take any credit away from him. He is one of the greatest draws of all time, without a doubt. Right.
Absolutely.
But every time he opens his mouth, it is almost like he is completely full of shit.
Well, that's
because I can't tell what's truth and what's real, and I think most of it is, it's just him bullshitting. So like this, for instance, he says that he had 108 stitches under his skin, right?
okay.
So you saw the video, obviously he did have a laceration above his eye.
Absolutely.
But it wasn't 108 stitches.
No.
And then he said that he broke his orbital bone, and he said he broke his under his eye. So if he broke under his eye, like you saw the video yourself, if he broke under his eye, it would be completely swollen. It supposedly happened the day before. You know what I mean? It would be immensely swollen. I've known guys that have had their orbital bone broken matches.
Sure.
And they, it was a very scary situation for them, and they weren't able to do anything the next day, let alone the stuff that Hogan ended up doing in this match.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another theory we're going to get into is the theory that, and this is the one I heard for years, was that Randy Savage punched Hulk Hogan the night before, and that's where the black eye came from.
Okay. Now, that's not one I actually knew.
Yeah. So, and of course, that one, in the thing where that's why they asked Hogan in this interview, like, did Macho Man punch you in the eye? And that's where he came up with all this. And he basically said, no. What happened was, I had this accident. I went to the show, and then like the commissioner, the state commissioner, the athletic commissioner at the show, I told him, hey, we're doing this angle where Randy Savage jumped me in a parking lot, so all this is fake, so don't freak out, so because he was afraid they wouldn't let him wrestle.
Okay.
Right. Once again, where this starts to fall apart for Hulk Hogan is if you're going to tell the commissioner that you're running an angle, right?
Yes.
Why would you tell him you're running an angle with another babyface? Exactly. If you're going to tell him an angle, why not just tell him the money?
Right. What you said on the air.
What they end up saying on the air. Why won't you just sell that?
Right.
Because the commissioner could have heard that and went back. Well, who did it? Was it that one or?
Right.
I thought it was this.
Lay it off on the heel.
Yeah, exactly. So, so to me, that combined with, if you really listen really closely to the commentary on this match, keep in mind, like, okay, Randy Savage punched Hulk Hogan, and then listen to this commentary, and you hear all these little Easter eggs. Bobby the Brain and Savage and Ross are kind of all just dropping little things, little almost like little jabs at Hogan the entire time.
I think I may go watch that again with this
with this
information.
yeah. So like I said, the match itself was great. Like I've always, Ted DiBiase is one of my favorites of all time, and Mike Rotunda as IRS is one of the most underrated guys in the history of our business because not everybody has to be Ric Flair. Not everyone has to be Hulk Hogan. Not everybody has to be The Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin. You need serviceable, utility guys that can do whatever you want them to do and are always going to have good matches.
Right.
And Mike Rotunda was absolutely that. He could lead just about anybody through anything. And this is a case of Brutus Beefcake. Brutus Beefcake looked like $1 million in this match.
Yes.
Because he had Ted DiBiase and Mike Rotunda to work with.
Absolutely. And Mike Rotunda even, he had a very long and I would say successful career. Certainly, he was never considered the main eventer, as you mentioned, but he certainly had a long, successful career, and I always appreciate him. Whether it's the Varsity Club in WCW to anything, whatever he was given, he made the most out of. All right, and that background is very interesting to me. I may want to go back and watch that again.
Also, I want to point out, too, this match also had a true hot tag, like we were talking about, and that's what I'm saying, like, we're still professional wrestling right here, and still, to me, is better than all the shit we're having to deal with nowadays.
Okay. Well, all right. I'm going to try not to get sidetracked on our disagreement here. The next match, let me move along. The next match was one that was going to appeal to me. As, WCW background, this involved Lex Luger. And one of the wrestlers I've always enjoyed watching the ring. If you ask me, guys I enjoyed have matches. If I made a list, it would be people like Randy Savage, and Mr. Perfect Kurt Hennig would be one of these people. And I would include Shawn Michaels. Obviously, I like watching guys who, to me, Mr. Perfect in particular was a guy who was graceful in the way he moved around the ring. I don't know how to explain it. Like when you see an athletic track star, they make it look easy. And when I watched Mr. Perfect in the ring, to me, he was someone who made it look easy. I don't know how to explain it better than that.
When it's anything but.
Yes. And so you have a match featuring Kurt Hennig versus Lex Luger.
Yeah, and this one was, it was a good match. There wasn't anything really special about it, you know what I mean? It was just, a good meat and potatoes kind of match. I really liked the finish, and this is a good storytelling finish. Perfect pins Luger 1-2 foot on the rope, right? They go into something else. 1-2. Kurt Hennig's feet are on the ropes, but the referee doesn't see it and counts to 3. That's a really good storytelling finish. You know what I mean? And it didn't hurt the referee. He was just in a bad position.
It was an honest mistake.
It was an honest mistake. Yeah, and obviously that led to Kurt Hennig being incensed,
irate
about losing the match and. He goes to the back after the match and has an altercation with Luger, but then Shawn Michaels is there.
Right.
And then he gets attacked by Shawn Michaels, and that starts their program.
Right. And I thought that was really good. I did like the idea, as a viewer, you see the babyface not get the advantage in the same situation where the heel did a few minutes before. And it kind of, feeds the feeling of injustice. The good guy got done wrong, and it kind of made sense. And directly, they took it to lead to another thing. So, there's no secret I was probably going to like this match to start with. I like both of these guys, generally speaking. And so this one appealed to me. However, that leads us to the next match on the card. I have expressed my admiration for The Undertaker for many years. However, this is a match that stuck out and probably is not one that's going to appear in the highlight reels anywhere.
Yeah, anytime they went over the streak, it was always
they kind of zoomed through this one.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of highlight to this one.
And for the sake of posterity, let me say this was The Undertaker facing the Giant Gonzalez. For WCW fans, he would have known as El Gigante during this time, a man who was over 7 feet tall. I don't know exactly. I heard 7'7". Okay, that's
legitimately 7'7".
That's what I had heard.
And actually, quick tidbit if people didn't know this, he's actually from Argentina.
Okay.
He's from Argentina, and he played basketball in Argentina, and he was actually drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. Well, Ted Turner owns the Atlanta Hawks and owns WCW, and when he didn't make it as a basketball player, he said, well, we'll keep your contract if you go wrestle in WCW, right? So then all of a sudden, no no idea, no previous thought process about professional wrestling, and all of a sudden he's making his living as a professional wrestler because he's 7'7" tall, legitimately.
Yes.
So
he was an attraction.
And like you said, this match, it was bad pretty much the entire time. But
well, there's one thing that we have to comment on and get out of the way quickly. For those of you who have not seen this and seen the way that Giant Gonzalez was presented, he wore this full body suit thing. You had a guy that was 7'7", but you put him in this suit. It was kind of airbrush painted on muscles and whatnot with hair in strategic locations, I guess.
Yeah, it was almost like a Yeti kind of.
Yeah.
Like a Sasquatch Yeti kind of vibe. I don't know what they were trying to go for there, but
I didn't understand how they weren't supposed to react seriously to this individual.
Right.
But did you have any comments on the match itself?
No, just it also followed the trend of the night of having very odd finishes. You know what I mean? Every finish had some kind of weird business to it, and this is no different. He used the ether on the Undertaker, and then they carted Undertaker out, but then he came back and did all the things. So I mean, it was just another odd way, and that's of course the only match the Undertaker won by disqualification.
Yes, he was
in his streak.
Yeah, Gonzalez was disqualified for using a rag covered with ether to smother the Undertaker, and the Undertaker was carted out, and then makes a comeback and gets the best of Gonzalez, and Gonzalez has to make his way to the back. So I guess it was wanting to make sure that in the minds of the crowd, Undertaker got the best of it.
Yeah, just a little. I mean, he still left on top. I mean, he won the match and left on top.
But I guess they didn't want the last image to be him being carted off screen.
Yeah,
maybe that was it. Okay. Now we get to what was the main event of the evening. It was the WWF champion, the best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be, WWF champion Bret, the Hitman Hart, defending his championship against the 505-pound Yokozuna.
And yeah, this match really shows why both guys are legitimate Hall of Famers. They were both so good. Yoko, obviously one of the best big men in history. I was watching this yesterday with my oldest son, and I was explaining just Yokozuna doing the simplest things garnered the most reaction because of his size. I hit a leg drop and hardly anyone makes a noise. Yokozuna hits a leg drop and the whole air comes out of the building. Because they're like that. How do you not get hurt doing that?
Exactly.
So it's all very, very believable. But they were really good at, Bret's always been really good at figuring out ways to still create that thing where, yes, he's the underdog, but he's still got that fighting chance.
Right.
One of the cool things was he had, I think Yoko went to step outside the ring, but he caught him, and he fell backwards, and his leg got caught in the rope for a minute, and that allowed Bret to kind of shine a little bit.
Right. It reminded me of some things they would do with Andre from time to time.
When he
in this case, his ankle or lower leg anyway was tied between the ropes, and so he was on his back, and it allowed Bret to really take advantage and go to work and deliver his second rope elbow and the things he did routinely and really get the best of it. And it made a lot of sense as a watcher. Hey, he's done something to kind of take away the size advantage that Yokozuna has over everyone, and really it was logical, way to let Bret have a part of the match.
Right. And like I said, let's go ahead and get into the finish, I guess. Obviously what happens is, Bret eventually, he gets the sharpshooter on Yokozuna, which is amazing in itself. And then Mr. Fuji uses the salt.
Right. Throws it into Bret's eyes.
And then Yoko just makes the cover, 1, 2, 3.
Right.
You know what I mean? And this would have been the first heel finish in WrestleMania history for the main event.
Right.
Up until that point. The year before was a DQ. Hogan still won, but it wasn't a pin. But this was the first legitimate heel getting the win. right? So then, of course, Brett's selling the eye, and Mr. Food, they're celebrating. Everyone, you watch the building, they're like, what?
Deflated.
Yeah, what the hell just happened?
Right.
And then Hogan comes out.
Yes.
The immortal Hulk Hogan,
As he tends to do.
Comes out and is checking on Brett and telling the ref, hey, he threw the salt, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And
Right.
in the midst of him trying to help Brett out of the ring and help him to the back, Mr. Fuji throws out the open challenge to Hulk Hogan. I give you a
Yes.
shot at WWE title against my Yokozuna right now.
And can I get this out of the way quickly that as
Sure.
a viewer
Yeah.
watching this, why on earth would Mr. Fuji make such a challenge?
Yeah.
I had trouble with that. I've always had trouble with this.
Well, it's different if Mr. Fuji was managing, like, let's say, Terry Taylor.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because that's a chicken shit heel character.
Okay.
But like when you're managing a Yokozuna,
A monster.
a monster
A
who's
behemoth.
badass,
And you
know.
believe your guy is going to kill.
Yeah.
And now Mr. Fuji been a long time part of the WWF. All right, I'm kind of feeling the rationalization here.
Yeah.
He's had numerous run-ins with Hogan's over the years, and I've got this monster, and I've got a chance to get even with this guy at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, like you said, he made the challenge. Hogan kind of looks, and Brett gives him the okay, like, yeah, go ahead, go do it. Because he's still selling the eyes and he can't do anything. And Hogan gets in there, and of course they go to throw the salt again,
Right.
but he ducks and hits Yoko, clothesline, leg drop,
Right.
1, 2, 3.
Place goes crazy.
Place goes crazy. And that's kind of what I know how you feel about this being a Bret Hart fan.
Yes.
And, you feel like, and I can see that where Bret was, his moment was taken away
Sure.
by Hulk Hogan, but like you just said, the place went nuts.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you saw the reaction that happened with it. Now, let's talk about this part of it. This actually, to me, I think actually plays into the whole Macho Man theory.
Okay.
Because imagine you're Hulk Hogan, okay? And from all things that I've heard of Hulk Hogan, as great as he is, he's very insecure. Right? So, like, you're Hulk Hogan, you're one of the greatest draws of all time, but Randy Savage punked you out, knocked you in your eye, blacked it for the whole world to see, and the entire locker room knows
Right.
that you got hacked.
Right. The locker room would know what happened.
Yeah, the locker room would know what happened, right? Word travels quickly. Telephone, telegraph, wrestler.
Yes,
Yeah.
there you go.
So to me, this kind of would play into that, like him going, well, I think I should win the title tonight, just to rub it in everyone's face that he had that kind of stroke. They go, I'll just leave, or
And Hulk Hogan always had stroke.
always had stroke. So to me, like I really think that it was a very ego-driven thing. Would have been just as good as if Bret had won initially. Maybe. We don't know, but they had a really good main event match.
Right.
So a main event caliber match for WrestleMania. So I don't think they were disappointed in that sense.
All right. Well, just when I see this was Hulk Hogan, to me being Hulk Hogan, he always seemed to find a way to turn everything to the ultimate benefit being for Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
He's his own best self-promoter. And that's why I won't say the way you said about when Hulk Hogan speaks. I say I take it with a grain of salt.
Oh yeah, I take it more with a grain. It's more like a cup of salt.
I guess I don't know how we're doing on time, but I will say that I want to get. You've mentioned how many people view this, view the show as a whole, and viewing it as the worst WrestleMania. Let me just get out. There have been a couple matches in particular, the Giant Gonzalez and the other things that I did not like. But you've mentioned several times the thing that aggravates me the most, and that was the way the matches ended. And here's what bothers me about that. Seeing that from a week-to-week show, say on a Raw, SmackDown, or let's say, and hey, we're in the Memphis area, the finishes of this match reminded me a great deal of the finishes I would see on Saturday morning on Memphis television from time to time. But those matches were intended to get you to the Mid-South Coliseum match.
Yeah.
And when I see a WrestleMania, as someone who bought more than his fair share of pay-per-views in his day, when I get to a WrestleMania, I want to see WrestleMania as the end goal. I want to see, and when I see time and time again these, I've heard it described as 50-50 booking, or however you want. I've heard those terminologies, but when I see these unclear finishes over and over again at WrestleMania, I find it very dissatisfying as a customer.
Yeah, because like you said, WrestleMania should be, and you can't end every angle at WrestleMania.
I understand.
You understand? So there has to be a little bit of business here and there, but like you said, you're doing that stuff to eventually get to the blow off, whatever, right? So your goal is to progress some of it, but then end some of it too, and then create new whatevers, right? So like you said, this match was just, it was almost like a glorified, television taping. Yeah. Like a glorified Raw, just because of the finishes we were given. They were all screwy finishes that kind of led somewhere else, after this. So yeah, I absolutely agree. But like you said, time-wise, we are at 35 minutes. So
okay.
But
thank you for letting me get that in.
I hope that, if you, Mark Tipton, I hope that even though you may think WrestleMania 9 is one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, if not the worst, at least you can appreciate the fact that it's still professional wrestling.
Yes, it was professional wrestling.
There were still hot tags. There were still comebacks. There were still good versus evil.
Exactly.
That kind of thing. So it's always good to see professional wrestling. And that's kind of why I wanted to go over this today, too, is kind of prove that point. So, for myself, the Golden Boy Greg Anthony, and my co-host, the Mega Maniac, Mark Tipton, thank you and goodbye.